when you're talking about no more petrodollar demand, which has been the synthetic demand for 5 decades, yeah, gold should go markedly higher in a currency that begins to globally lose complete and total demand and interest for holding it. So yeah, I think there's no question the price goes higher, but that's not why you buy it. You don't buy it to get wealthy. You buy it because what's going to happen to the currency and it's massive devaluation. You know, we're told that we're supposed to think that a 2% inflation rate is good. How about a negative 2%? Because the lower the inflation rate, the better the standard of living, the higher the standard of living. And if you believe that we really have 3% inflation here, I got some oceanfront real estate to sell you in Minneapolis. I mean, inflation is way higher than 3%. I wish it was only 3%. And of course, John Williams of Shadow Stats will tell you that inflation's probably 9, 10, 11% in reality, but the Fed and you know, the U.S. government has every interest to lie about those numbers to maintain an inflationary politicians have chosen inflation over austerity. Much easier to pay off a debt. And it's funny, you know, I think the reason I want President Trump to be president again is not because I think he can fix all of this stuff. Maybe he can. Maybe he can. I mean, Vance is talking the same way about the World Reserve status as Jared Knucklehead Bernstein is, that maybe it's not a good thing. And they keep talking about devaluing the dollar. Why I want Trump to be president is because I'm sick and tired of the lawlessness and the craziness in this country. We've let 20 million people in illegally. If 5% don't like us, that's 1 million people. That's a standing army. It's real. And just how upside down everything is in this country. I mean, all of these things that are so important, that is coiled into this whole economic thing too. To talk one without the other is a mistake, because if this country was what it once was when I was a kid, where you respected authority, you held a door for a woman, yes sir, yes ma'am, you know, the nuclear family, where you were valued by your merit, not by your lifestyle, where the elections were never questioned, where the immigration system was something embraced, and it was a really good, amazing thing. If you came into this country, you got through the immigration process, you got your citizenship, you contribute, you assimilate. All of this stuff is upside down, and you look what's happened to our great cities, and the people around the world are saying, what the hell's happened to that country? It's all part of the same thing. So I don't know that either administration, I don't think Trump can fix what we've already destroyed. I think this administration has done more to inflict damage over the last 4 years than any external foe could have done, just by their stupidity. And I mean, I think we need a change for sure, but for me, it's not about economics. I don't know we can fix this. We've gone too far down the rabbit hole. You know, you say $1 trillion every 100 days. That's 31,688 years ago is 1 trillion seconds. That's $100,000 every second. 1, 2, 3, keep on going. And that's how much debt we're burying our children with. And so I don't know that we can get back from that, but God willing, we can at least get some sanity in this country and feel safe again, walking the streets of downtown Minneapolis, downtown Miami, which is better than most, downtown San Francisco, downtown New York City. I mean, really? That's a bigger deal to me, but it is all part of the same problem. And that's why I feel, and I've said for a long time, Andrew, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel it's almost too stupid to be stupid. Yeah. It's almost too stupid to not have been planned.
When we talk about the eventual decline of the US dollar and the shift away from the petrodollar system, it's crucial to understand what this means for the global economy and, more importantly, for your personal financial security. The petrodollar system, which has underpinned the global demand for the US dollar for decades, is facing unprecedented challenges. As nations like China and Russia look for alternatives, and as the world gradually moves towards a multipolar currency system, the demand for the dollar will inevitably decrease. And as that demand wanes, the value of the dollar will plummet. This isn't just speculation, it's a trajectory that's already in motion. Just look at how China and Russia have been amassing gold reserves at an unprecedented rate. They understand that the global financial landscape is shifting, and they're preparing for it by stockpiling real, tangible assets. Gold. The significance of this cannot be overstated. You see, when the dollar starts to lose its global dominance, the price of gold is likely to skyrocket in dollar terms. But as I've said before, you don't buy gold to get rich. You buy it to preserve your wealth, to protect your purchasing power against the inevitable devaluation of the dollar. The real wealth isn't in fiat currency that can be printed at will by central banks. It's in assets that have intrinsic value, gold and silver. Now let's talk about inflation. We're constantly told that a 2% inflation rate is healthy for the economy. But let's break that down. Inflation, at its core, is the devaluation of your currency. It's the reason why a dollar today buys significantly less than it did 10 or 20 years ago. The idea that a certain level of inflation is good is fundamentally flawed. In reality, the lower the inflation rate, the better it is for the standard of living. Imagine a world where we had a negative inflation rate, where your purchasing power increased over time. That's not a fantasy. It's how things were during periods of deflation in history. But the powers that be, the central banks and governments, don't want that because inflation makes it easier for them to manage their massive debt loads. It's much easier to pay off a debt with devalued dollars than with dollars that retain their value. The truth is, inflation is much higher than the official numbers suggest. Shadow Stats, an alternative economic research organization, estimates that real inflation is closer to 10%, not the 3% that the government claims. The government has every incentive to underreport inflation because it allows them to pay less on things like Social Security and other benefits that are indexed to inflation. But for the average person, this means that their savings are eroding faster than they realize. Now, this brings me to why so many people are disillusioned with the current state of the country. It's not just the economic policies, it's the erosion of societal values and the breakdown of law and order. The lawlessness, the lack of respect for authority, and the chaos in our streets are symptoms of a deeper problem. When a country loses its moral compass, its economic foundation begins to crumble as well. This is why I believe we need strong leadership that can restore some semblance of order and sanity. It's not just about the economy, it's about the soul of the nation. We need leadership that understands the importance of sound money, of fiscal responsibility, and of maintaining the rule of law. Unfortunately, the current administration has done more harm in the past few years than any external adversary could have hoped for. The reckless spending, the out-of-control debt, and the erosion of public trust are leading us down a dangerous path. And when you add to that the geopolitical shifts, like the decline of the petrodollar, it becomes clear that we're in uncharted territory. Now, you might be wondering what you can do in the face of all this. The answer is simple. Protect yourself by holding assets that have stood the test of time. Gold and silver are not just investments, they're insurance against the collapse of the fiat currency system. When the dust settles, those who hold real assets will be the ones who come out on top.
If you look at Project mBridge is a cross-border payment service and or vehicle that sidesteps the SWIFT and allows for these countries to trade their central bank digital currencies with one another outside the Western intermediary banks. No SWIFT, no sanctioning, if you will. And it was a joint effort between China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and the United Arab Emirates. We've talked about that for over a year. And you know, I've been saying for a while, I'm sure as you have, that gold and oil seem to have been remonetized across the globe, that they are worth more than the currencies that are used to buy them, certainly worth more than the dollars that are used to buy them. And it's interesting that the first two trades they did on mBridge last year was China trading with United Arab Emirates digital yuan for gold and for oil. You know, you look at oil as being remonetized. China was awarded a $2 billion contract to remodernize the largest airport in Iran, paid for with oil. It used to be paid in dollars, now it's paid in oil. And certainly when we look at gold and its role or replacing the treasury bond, it's doubled the performance of the 10-year treasury in the past 25 years and has no counterparty liability. It can't be sanctioned or stolen. And so you see a lot of countries that are using gold to replace the long bond and using oil as a form of money. Okay, all of that being said, let's go back to Project mBridge. Who's behind Project mBridge besides those four countries? Well, lo and behold, it's the BIS. And Saudi Arabia just became a full participant in Project mBridge. Let me say that one more time. Saudi Arabia, the largest producer of oil in the world, just became a full participant in Project mBridge, which is not compatible with US dollars that the BIS is behind. Now, think of the way the BIS did things in 2017, 18, and 19. And I know they said to these banks, we're going to reclassify it tier 1, get your gold. So if you look at all of these banks that I just mentioned, nearly 40 banks that have brought all of their gold home, and if you look at the massive amount of gold purchasing over the last couple of years by the central banks, BIS is at it again, I would have to think. Because if you read the white paper on the unit token that will trade on Project mBridge, it says something very interesting, and that is that the baskets that will be used to mint these tokens, that each country will mint, will be 60% BRICS plus currencies. And by the way, I did an interview with Vince Lancey not too long ago, and he thinks, and I think it's genius, that China, Russia, maybe India, they will do all they can to back their central bank digital currency with some form of gold backing so that it comprises the majority of the currencies within the basket.
The future of the US dollar and the global financial system is uncertain. But one thing is clear. Change is coming, and it's coming fast. The recent moves by China and Russia to distance themselves from the US dollar and the creation of new financial systems like Project mBridge are signals that the world is preparing for a new economic order. This shift is not just about geopolitics. It's about survival in a world where the traditional financial systems are becoming increasingly unstable. Let's talk about Project mBridge for a moment. This is a cross-border payment system that bypasses the traditional Western financial networks like SWIFT. It allows countries to trade directly with each other using their own digital currencies without the need for intermediary banks. This is a game changer. It means that countries no longer need to rely on the US dollar as the global reserve currency. They can trade directly with each other using digital currencies backed by tangible assets like gold. And guess who's behind Project mBridge? The Bank for International Settlements, BIS, along with countries like China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. This is not a fringe idea. It's being spearheaded by some of the most powerful financial institutions in the world. Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil producer, recently became a full participant in Project mBridge. This is significant because it signals the beginning of the end for the petrodollar system. For decades, the petrodollar system has created artificial demand for the US dollar. Countries around the world had to hold dollars to buy oil, which kept the dollar strong. But as Saudi Arabia and other oil-producing nations move away from the dollar, that artificial demand will evaporate and the dollar's value will plummet. When that happens, the price of gold, which is valued in dollars, will soar. But again, this isn't about getting rich. It's about preserving your wealth. As the dollar loses value, everything priced in dollars will become more expensive. But gold, which has intrinsic value, will retain its purchasing power. This is why central banks around the world are buying gold hand over fist. They understand what's coming, and they're preparing for it by holding real, tangible assets. And it's not just gold. Silver is another crucial asset that's being accumulated by nations and savvy investors alike. Silver has a unique dual role as both an industrial metal and a monetary metal. It's used in everything from electronics to solar panels, and its demand is only increasing. But like gold, the supply of silver is finite. And as more and more people wake up to the realities of the global financial system, the demand for silver will skyrocket. We're already seeing signs of this. China, the world's second largest producer of silver, has shifted from being a net exporter to a net importer. This is a big deal because it shows that China is stockpiling silver for a reason. They understand that silver is a strategic asset, one that will play a crucial role in the new economic order. But the mainstream media won't tell you this. They won't tell you that countries around the world are preparing for a post-dollar world by accumulating gold and silver. Instead, they'll distract you with stories about price gouging and inflation, blaming everything but the real cause, the reckless monetary policies of central banks. This is why it's so important to stay informed and to think critically about the information you're being fed. Don't be like the millions of people who will be caught off guard when the dollar collapses. Take control of your financial future by holding assets that have real value, assets like gold and silver. And let's talk about what happens when the system finally collapses. When the dollar loses its status as the global reserve currency, we could see a scenario where the US government has no choice but to revalue gold. This has happened before. In the 1930s, the US government revalued gold from $20 an ounce to $35 an ounce overnight. This was done to devalue the dollar and to stabilize the economy during the Great Depression. Today, we could see something similar. As the dollar loses value, the government could revalue gold to a much higher price, effectively devaluing the dollar and wiping out a significant portion of the national debt. This would be devastating for anyone holding dollars, but it would be a windfall for those holding gold. But don't wait for the government to act. By the time they do, it will be too late. Start accumulating gold and silver now, while prices are still relatively low. Don't think of it as an investment. Think of it as insurance. When the dust settles, you'll be glad you did. In the end, it's all about preparedness. The world is changing rapidly, and those who are paying attention will be the ones who come out on top. Don't be fooled by the narratives being pushed by the government and the mainstream media. Inflation is not caused by greedy corporations. It's caused by reckless monetary policy. And the solution is not more government intervention. It's real assets like gold and silver. So take control of your financial future. Start accumulating gold and silver today. Stay informed and be prepared for the changes that are coming. The future belongs to those who are ready for it.
Stay informed about the latest developments shaping the precious metals markets with regular updates from the Finance Daily team. Not only that, but as a subscriber, you'll also receive timely silver and gold price notifications and early access to groundbreaking news unavailable to the general public. Join our free gold and silver newsletter today, link in the description.